I don't believe that it's a zero-sum game. I think that we can have policies that help people on both sides of the aisle.
Welcome to On the Record here on Queen City News Plus. I'm Chief Political Correspondent Andy Weber. Our topics today: Charlotte leaders reacting to the ongoing operation by CBP and ICE in the city of Minneapolis, as well as an interview with a candidate looking to unseat a longtime controversial Democratic incumbent who represents portions of Charlotte. But first, our conversation with State Rep Jordan Lopez, a different state lawmaker who represents parts of the city who saw a pretty significant ICE and Border Patrol deployment back in November. The operation was dubbed Charlotte's Web. We asked him for his thoughts on the ongoing operation in Minneapolis, how his district is doing today, and where he thinks federal officials should focus their resources instead of immigration enforcement. Here's our conversation. Let's first go back to that week in November when we saw ICE and CBP in Charlotte. How would you describe that week for your district?
Very tense, stressful for many across the community, very scary, whether that be because worrying about their own legal status, worrying about just simply the color of their skin, really, and not speaking English, or maybe speaking with an accent. I mentioned several times throughout that week that Border Patrol they were grabbing first, asking questions later, and that is scary for everybody, not just Spanish speakers, not just brown people, but it should be alarming for literally everybody. And I think that you felt that throughout the entire community for that week. It was also very troubling for our business community. It took a pretty big hit throughout the East Charlotte area, with many businesses just deciding it's better for us to close down than to put any of our employees or our customers at risk, with Border Patrol moving through the city as if they just had impunity to grab whoever they wanted to and question you, rough you up. We have people who have been assaulted or who were wrongfully detained. I mean, it was a scary time for everybody, but it was also one in which we all came together as a community. We looked out for one another. We looked out for our small businesses. In the time since, we have rallied around our small businesses to support and help them get back on their feet. There was a lot of revenue loss during that week. Businesses haven't been closed down, but folks have been patronizing our small business community, helping make sure that they're getting back on their feet. And so it was both scary, a bit troubling, but it also showed, a lot of the resolve that East Charlotteans have.
You mentioned the businesses being impacted. I'm curious, for folks just living their day-to-day lives, have your constituents recovered from it, or are they still living in some level of fear based on that experience?
I think it depends on who you talk to. There are a lot of folks who I think have not moved on, and especially as we see things happening in other cities across the country, and there's always the rumors circulating that, is Border Patrol coming back? Is ICE going to increase their presence in Charlotte? People are certainly a lot more cautious and are looking for ways to get involved, or looking for ways to do the observer training to make sure that if they see something that they feel is wrong, or that they see somebody who they believe their rights are being violated, they know how to document safely and to keep themselves protected, but to also make sure that they're holding law enforcement accountable. But there are folks who are worried and who are still afraid to leave their homes or to do their day-to-day business. There was I don't want to say a rumor, but there was a thing circulating the other week that Border Patrol agents, or ICE agents, were instructed to make arrests at the immigration court that's in Charlotte. So you've got folks who are trying to go about the process and trying to become citizens or trying to become legal residents, and they're still being told you're going to be apprehended if you go to do the process the right way. And so that, of course, just kind of reinstills fear into everybody, or into people especially most impacted. So there is definitely still a level of fear throughout the community, a level of heightened awareness that people are having. But then still very much so the thought process of how do we make sure we are prepared as a community to support our neighbors, to support our businesses, to keep as many people safe and as informed as possible.
Well, having that experience in Charlotte with CBP and then for longer term with ICE, what did you make of these scenes of Minneapolis? I imagine there was it was similar to what we experienced here, but also it became violent and dangerous with this most recent shooting. What did you make of these scenes we've seen?
I was honestly worried. I mean, and ultimately, unfortunately, that the worry, came to fruition with the killings of people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy last week, where it's like you just worry that somebody is going to get hurt. I mean, even more people are going to get hurt, and unfortunately lose their lives. We know that ICE and that Border Patrol agents are assaulting citizens who are simply observing their actions, observing their abuses of power, who are documenting these individuals so they can keep them in their own database. And who knows what they're doing with that. It's honestly been a lot of worry, as I have not only, recalling our experiences here in Charlotte with Border Patrol, but then seeing how they're maneuvering in other cities across the country. It's also been a level of, I think I would say, reigniting like a flame to say like we can all, if we're standing together though, we will, work with each other to ensure we're keeping each other safe, that we're keeping our community informed, that we're holding the federal government accountable. And that has been something I've been inspired by the people of Minneapolis as they have done their work through the past several weeks. I think I would just say that it's reignited like a kind of a flame to say like we can get through this so long as we're getting through it together. We're working with each other. We're keeping each other safe. We've seen that the federal government is not trying to keep us safe, and in fact will do harm to you and then lie about the circumstances that led up to them doing harm to you. So it's been a very interesting few weeks as we've seen what's going on in Minneapolis and then recalling here in Charlotte, both in November, but then also what could come again in the future.
It does seem there's been a shift in the narrative in the conversation since the shooting of Alex Preddy. You've seen Tom Tillis come out against Kristi Noem, against Stephen Miller. You've also seen the Trump team seem to dial it back a bit. They have switched leadership in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Is that a good sign, you think, for your position? Or what do you make of these changes? Is it good news, bad news, or nothing?
I think it is a welcome change of direction for the administration to take. Ultimately, and outside with the people of Minneapolis, get out of their city. They're making their demands heard very loudly and very clearly, the same way that people across Charlotte did when the Border Patrol specifically was operating here. If anything, that this has been really a disservice to law enforcement officers across the country at whatever level of government they operate in, because when you're just using violence, when you're using fear to control folks, you're not keeping anybody safer. You're creating a bigger delta between the citizens that you're supposed to be protecting and the law enforcement officers themselves. And I think that the change in leadership, maybe we'll see a different tone on the ground. I do agree that the tone from leadership has certainly shifted, but we will have to see really how that translates to people on the ground and what they're seeing if they're continually being assaulted for simply observing, which is within their legal right. We will have to kind of see how it unfolds.
I think there's many people who say, honestly, I don't care about folks who are here living their lives, being peaceful, contributing to society. But there are some folks who are in a pretty strong camp and who have the president's ear, at least, that say, hey, we're enforcing laws. They have to be followed. If you're here illegally, expect deportation. What would you say to a person who makes that argument?
I would say that in a society of laws, enforcing the laws is important, but how you enforce the laws is just as important as enforcing them in the first place. And so I think we can all agree that there is an importance, a necessity to law enforcement. But where I would challenge them is to find some humanity in understanding and agreeing that how is important. If we are going to be that city on the hill, that beacon really for democracy, then we should all believe in it and believe that those democratic values apply to everybody. And if you don't see that the way ICE and Border Patrol agents have been moving throughout cities across America is a direct violation of those democratic values, a direct violation of people's basic dignity as human beings, then what exactly do you stand for? Is it just what's the word I'm looking for? Are you just looking for punitive punishment in the first place? Is that it? Because that doesn't get us to safer communities. Enforcing the law is one thing, but then I would also challenge them to write to your legislators, whether I guess your federal representatives, and ask them to get to work on actually reforming our immigration system. We can't just look at the removal of individuals as the end of immigration, because that doesn't stop. Immigration is a human right. People should have the right to get to be where they want to be. And in a country like America, where we have since our beginning at least tried to uphold the values of being a welcoming place for immigrants to call home and to build new lives and to chase that American dream, let's press our federal elected officials to make that a possibility. Like, it shouldn't take as long as it does. It shouldn't cost as much as it does. It shouldn't be as high a barrier for so many people to become legal residents and eventually citizens in the country, in the United States, excuse me. But it is. That's an issue the federal government can and should get to work on tomorrow, today. I mean, really years ago could have been addressed, but here we are. I would really just challenge folks to expand their thinking, because yes, enforcing the law is important, as I said earlier, but how matters.
Speak more to that. I'm curious. We hear Charlotte a lot in the national headlines recently with public safety and the presence of Border Patrol. In terms of resources, if it weren't to be this issue, where do you think federal officials should focus their attention when it comes to Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and North Carolina as a whole?
Federal officials could start by urging our state legislature to pass a budget, and could urge legislative leaders to work with every member that was duly elected to that body to craft a budget that is fully representative of the people, not only of Mecklenburg County, the people of House District 112 in East Charlotte, but the people across North Carolina. Investments could be made in mental health resources. As we look back to the tragedy that took place in August of last year with Irina Zarutska on the Blue Line, that man was mentally ill and should not have been on the streets, but otherwise should have received treatment a very long time ago. And we do not have adequate access in North Carolina. If I'm not mistaken, we rank towards the bottom nationally with respect to access to mental health care. That's help that the federal government could be providing or trying to provide, to North Carolina to help us address public safety issues. Adequate access to housing, adequate access to healthcare. I mean, we know that a lot of crime is crime of necessity because people do not have access to the things that they need to survive. And then people do desperate things to survive. Let's make it easier for people to just build lives with the necessities, and then empower them, to build a life that they are looking to build. But if you don't have a place to call home, if you don't have access to a medical provider, a primary care provider, we're already well beyond the curve. And these are areas where the federal government could and should be stepping in. The federal government gave ICE last year a budget that is bigger than most militaries. Imagine how much good we can do throughout our communities across North Carolina and the country if that money was coming to people who actually need it.
All right, State Representative Jordan Lopez, we can leave it there. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate you.
Next up, our interview with Rodney Sadler. He is looking to unseat Carla Cunningham in the State House. Cunningham has made several headlines in recent months for voting with Republicans on several controversial bills, even at times overriding the governor on some of those bills he has vetoed. So we asked Sadler why voters should choose him over Cunningham, who's been in this seat for more than a decade. Let's first start with, why did you want to run for this seat?
I think I wanted to run for the seat because for a long time, I felt as though we needed different leadership, that we've needed to have leadership that was responsive to the needs of the people. Right now, I think that we're in a serious livability crisis in Charlotte. We need to make sure that people are able to support and sustain themselves. People are feeling the crunch, having salaries that are not able to keep up with housing costs, having salaries that are behind what it costs to buy food each week. And you're living in communities where we have such problematic nature with our schools. Some schools are incredibly good and they seem to serve white people primarily. Other schools are struggling and they seem to serve Black community. And it seems odd that in a city like this, you'd have such a divide between Black and white, rich and poor. In the city of Charlotte. I'd love to figure out a way to move past that. I'd like to find a politics that works for all of us. I want a city where everyone can thrive.
What makes you qualified to take on those pretty large issues?
No, I think I've been working on these issues for a long time now. Some of these issues are the issues that got me arrested back in 2013 at the General Assembly. I went down there to try to fight for the working people of North Carolina. We sang songs and prayed prayers and tried to advise our elected officials. And after sitting on the floor of the General Assembly building, we were arrested. We were arrested standing up for making sure that we did not put more money into private schools that should go to public schools. We were arrested making sure that we could get the Medicaid expansion part of the Affordable Care Act passed and make sure that people had access to the kind of health care they needed to survive. We were fighting for the working people then, and that's what I'm doing now. So instead of doing it on the outside, I want to try to do it on the inside.
What should Governor Stein's endorsement tell voters, and what did you make of it?
Well, I'm grateful for Governor Stein's endorsement. I think it was a wonderful opportunity to show that our ideas and our issues align. We're working for the same thing, trying to improve the status of working North Carolinians, trying to lift up those who have been left out of the current economic model, trying to turn things around so that everyone in North Carolina can thrive.
You're running for a seat with a longtime incumbent. People know her. If I'm a voter, why not vote for someone who has that almost over a decade of experience?
She's had over a
Over
decade
a
of
decade.
experience, and I've voted for her myself any number of times. I've worked with her when she worked for Medicaid expansion, but she's proven that she's not the kind of person that we need in the seat. She proved that with not only her vote against Governor Stein's vetoes when he's trying to protect us from the worst things that our legislature will do to us. She also proved it by saying some of the things that she said there. Every citizen and non-citizen in our district is a human being worthy of care, consideration, respect, and dignity. And when you don't do that, you don't deserve to govern us. Literally, if you can't support all of us, then you don't deserve to govern any of us.
I can see you're making the argument of it was pro public safety, it was pro enforcing laws equally across the board. What would you make of an argument like that?
I think that there's one thing about enforcing laws, but as Dr. King said, they're unjust laws as they're unjust people. And we got a moral responsibility to make sure that unjust laws don't go into effect. We want to make sure that we are having laws that truly do protect the people, lift the people, not hurt the people.
If you were to win this seat, obviously, and you were to win the general election, the makeup of the General Assembly is heavily in the Republican favor. When folks vote for a Democrat, they might see it as sometimes futile because of the votes. So why should they vote for a Democrat in this seat?
It's not at all futile. What we're trying to do is we're trying to change the state. And sometimes it's one vote at a time, one election at a time. But ultimately, we're going to make the change. So what I want to do is I want to win now. I want to bring people along so that we can win later. We can win more seats. We can begin to change the makeup of the General Assembly. And I'd like to begin to change the way that we do politics in general. I don't believe that it's a zero-sum game. I think that we can have policies that help people on both sides of the aisle. And I think we can work towards that. We all want better schools. We all want jobs that can pay enough for us all to live. We all want houses that we can afford to live in. I think all of these issues cross the aisle. They're issues we all want. And trust me, now that we're seeing the stress that's put on the healthcare system, we all need healthcare that we can afford. So I think we can find ways to work together, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, towards goals that we all need.
What do you make of how the General Assembly currently operates? Specifically, GOP, the Speaker, Senate Pro Tem. What do you make of how they run it?
I think that there's a problem with the way they're currently running it. I've got significant problems with bills that are sent in from Washington, D.C. This decision to get rid of a congressional district because someone in Washington, D.C. asked for that, that's a problem. Taking bills that come down from the American Legislative Exchange Council and just passing them on the floor without even changing the name of the state on the bill, that's a problem. We have a problem with the way that our General Assembly runs right now, and I really would like to change that. And I really would like to have a different kind of policy, a policy that's based on love. What does it look like to govern by love? Love would mean that everybody has a livable wage. Love would mean that everybody had access to health care. Love would mean that everyone had an equal opportunity for quality education. And that's what I'd like to govern by. Let's lift up the principle of love.
Later this month, there's going to be a committee hearing with city leaders about public safety. It'll be in Raleigh before a GOP-controlled committee. Are you aware of that hearing?
I'm not aware of it. No, don't.
It's focused on public safety. It's called by Brendan Jones. The GOP has focused a lot on public safety in Charlotte and how they blame Democrats for certain high-profile crimes.
Yes.
What do you make of those critiques, and how should public safety be addressed in Charlotte?
I think public safety is a critical issue. I believe that everybody deserves to have their rights protected and their safety respected. I believe that we need to make sure we have a safe environment. But I don't believe that takes place by putting militarized forces on our streets. I think that's the exact wrong way to do it. I think one of the things that we need in the city of Charlotte and across our country is better access to mental health care. If we could have quality mental health care in addition to policing, it will give us that balance that we need to make sure that people who don't need to have access to weapons don't have them, that people that are in unstable conditions can get the help they need so that they don't commit those crimes that we talk about later on. I think far too often our national politics and even our state politics have tried to racialize these things and say that it's a black or brown issue. It's not. This is something that we can deal with by addressing poverty and by addressing mental health issues.
It's between Representative Cunningham and the sheriff, but you are running for this seat. What is your view on the sheriff's work in Mecklenburg County, Sheriff McFadden?
I think the sheriff of Mecklenburg County has done a great job of doing what he's been doing for a long time. I've not had any negative encounters with him. I don't know about this situation with he and Carla Cunningham. Everybody deserves to be safe, and everybody has a right to know what goes on with our public safety officials. So that transparency is important to me. But right now, I just pray that they're able to resolve those issues on their own time. We've got more important things to do. We've got to protect the working people of North Carolina, and that's what I'm about.
Touching back on immigration, because it was that bill that Representative Cunningham voted for, we saw ICE, we saw Border Patrol specifically in several parts of the city. Were they in your district at all? Did you see them? Did you hear reports of
I've
them?
heard reports of them
Yeah.
across the city of Charlotte at different points in time, more so around the Central Avenue area
Right.
than in other parts of the city. But it created a significant problem. Carla Cunningham's vote for HB 318 opened up the door so that ICE could invade, so that our neighbors would be left safe, so that our children would be less safe in schools. And this is something that we need to recognize. Our votes have consequences, and that vote was incredibly consequential. There were days when thousands of children didn't go to school. What do we do about that? That's a significant cost. There are businesses that did not open for an entire week. That's millions of dollars that's lost in the economic development of Charlotte. They hurt Charlotte with those policies. I want to make sure that we don't allow that to happen again.
It's clear the representative is one of the few Democrats who has earned the approval in some cases of the GOP. I can see a constituent saying, hey, that person has some connections across the aisle. Maybe she'll get more done for me.
I understand that's an interesting argument to have, but you don't trade dollars for pennies, and you don't let people suffer because of bad decisions. And some of the decisions he's made have just been bad. Decisions like allowing Duke to raise utility rates on people who are already struggling to pay their electric bills, allowing money to be taken from the public school system to be put into private schools when our public school systems are struggling to keep up right now. These decisions hurt the people, and this is why we need a change.
When the new city council came in, they said, Raleigh, we need more money, especially when it came to public safety and funding, more DAs, staffing at the jail. What is the trick to convince the speaker, the GOP, that Charlotte does need more money from the state, you think?
I think recognizing that Charlotte makes more money for the state than just about any other district in the area. Mecklenburg County is one of the major economic engines in the state, and we need to recognize that. And one of the things I've been fighting for is greater control by local officials of what goes on in Mecklenburg County. We need to be able to determine what is a living wage for Charlotte. We need to be able to determine how do we make our schools more viable, more effective. We need greater control by local people in our area. And I think that giving us greater local control gives us better access to public safety, gives us better access to livable wages, gives us better access to schools that our children can thrive in.
How does the rest of your campaign look?
I think our campaign is looking pretty good right now. We've got great support, great groundswell, not just the governor's support and endorsement, but endorsements from people across the board. And it's really exciting to see this, to see people coming together. This is not about me. This is about us coming together because we think it's time for a change.
What surprised you in your conversations with voters?
I think so far, people are just disappointed and they're starting to throw up their hands. The frustration that's there. What can we do? That lack of hope, that hurts my heart. I think we have hope. This is a democracy, and a democracy only works when we, the people, stand up and make it our own. So I want us to say right now, more than anything, as I talk to people in our district, talk to people everywhere, we have the power to change what's going on. We have the agency to be able to step in there and shift it. And more than that, we have the responsibility to do it. We are in the midst of a 250-year experiment in democracy. And if we want this to work, it's our job to stand up, step out, and do something about it right now.
And we are still in contact with Carla Cunningham's campaign to arrange for an interview ahead of that March 3rd primary, where she will face Sadler and several other challengers. Thanks again for watching On the Record. I'm Chief Political Correspondent Andy Weber, and we'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.